A very good morning to one and all present here. Today, we are just going to continue our webinar with tutorial group 5 on multiple childhood. I would like to request my fellow mates to continue with the presentation on the same. Now, please present the first slide.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'll be presenting on the effect of abusive environment which has on a child. But before I jump into that, I'll be explaining what is abuse, what are the different types of abuses, and also the effects that have on a child. Okay, so first is, can you switch on to the slide? Yes. What is abuse? Basically, abuse is the improper usage or treatment of something or to someone, often to unfair in nature. Okay. In other words, abuse is the deliberate infliction of injury, unreasonable confinement, intimidation, or punishment which results in physical harm, maybe in cognitive harm, mental anguish, or psychological anguish. So, these are the things. And abuse also includes the deprivation of an individual of good services or necessary services which needed to be provided to a child, uh, basically to maintain the healthy physical as well as mental as well as psychological and social well-being. So there are many agencies which can cause different type of abuses. For example, it can be family, friends, relatives, strangers, peers, even teachers. Some other I mean The examples can be physical. The examples of abuse can be physical, it can be verbal, non-verbal, or maybe it is some kind of aggression, violation, or unjust practices, crimes, or any other type of aggressions. So now the question comes that what can be included in abusive environment. So any kind of physical violence or maybe mental violence or environment which is ridden with aggression, violence, or maybe some kind of ill or malpractices can be categorized under that. Broadly, there are four types of child abuses: physical, sexual, emotional, and neglect. So physical abuse is basically, it happens when a child has been hurt or injured, deliberately, and it's not an accident. For example, poisoning, choking, or hitting, beating, or causing any kind of harm physically to the child. Sexual abuse, it's a kind of abuse when the child is subjected to some kind of harassment. It is oriented to sexual harassment or improper touch, or maybe any kind of uh, sexual sexual unwilling engagement of child with any person. Next is emotional abuse. Emotional abuse happens when a child is treated in a way that neglectfully impact their social, emotional, and intellectual development. It can be caused by rejection, yelling, criticism, bullying, verbal violence, exposure to domestic and family violence, etc. Another type is neglect. So happens child basic when a child's basic needs are not met, affecting their health and development. Basically, when the parents or the elders, they are ignorant and indifferent towards the necessary needs of a child. For example, neglecting their need of food, health care, or adequate clothing, or personal hygiene. Yes, effect of abusive environment on child. So basically, I have categorized in uh, three, actually six categories: physical, cognitive, psychological, behavioral, and social relationships as well. Like that comes under societal issues. So physical, if a elongated period of exposure to this mentally abusive environment can hamper various factors, various domains of child's development. The physical consequences will be, just a second. Yes. So physical environment, physically, the child might be affected by different kind of diseases like malnutrition, vision problem, brain damage, or maybe high blood pressure or migraines, strokes, etc. Intense and prolonged period of abusive environment can immensely hinder the growth of child's brain. Even in some peculiar cases, hindering of functionality of brain is also been reported. So history of maltreatment may be correlated with a reduced volume in overall brain size, which is said by Brick and Nielsen in the year 2016. So when I was researching, I came across this term called epigenetic. So epigenetic refers to the change in how an individual gene are expressed and used, which may be temporary or permanent. So changes can passed on to offsprings as well, and basically these changes are caused by significant life experiences such as child maltreatment or substance exposure. For example, one study has found that the child who had been maltreated exhibited changes in genes associated with various physical and psychological disorders such as cancer, immune disorders, bipolar disorders, and depression. Cognitive consequences. So a child can suffer through various diminished executive functionality of cognitive skills. Maltreatment can also disrupt the brain development, impaired or compromise brain functionality like working memory, self control, cognitive flexibility, and even the child might struggle with academic excellence. So the culprit of causing other cognitive problems like paying attention, learning difficulties, etc., can also be included in the hindering factor of brain and overall development of a child. Psychological consequences. The child might feel the feeling of isolation or aloofness, fear, distrust, anxiety, which can translate into life in a longer run as well in the later life of the child. Uh, Experiences of abusive treatment or exposure to abuse can also manifest into educational difficulties, for example, low self esteem, depression, trouble maintaining and forming social relationships, poor mental or emotional health, in which we can also say that psychiatric disorders, higher prevalence of suicide attempts can be seen. So, it is also seen that there might be some kind of difficulty in forming or maybe in developing social attachments. There is a high possibility of suffering from attachment disorder, which is definitely a negative impact on child's ability as well as a proper growth of the child. Then second is, sorry, fifth is behavioral consequences. So behavioral consequences can include juvenile delinquency leading to adult criminality or any kind of engagement to adult crimes or criminal activities. So girls tend to express internalizing behavior, for example, depression, social withdrawal, anxiety. And on the other hand, boys are more of externalizing behavior. They portray externalizing behavior, for example, in the shape of bullying, aggression, hostility, etc. In the adulthood as well, they might lead to unhealthy sexual practices, and there's a significant higher risk of a substance use disorder like alcohol or other drug uses. Now the last one I want to include is social or societal consequences. That is, they find it very difficult to establish a very meaningful kind of relationship in the society, and even face difficulties in order to um, abide by laws and order of the society in the smooth running of society. And also they might suffer from detachment from the society or environment they live in. Thank you. Now I just want to forward it to my fellow mate so she can continue.
Good morning, everyone. I'm continuing in the topic of child abusement, and my topic is survivor of child abusement. Child abuse happens when someone caring for a child hurts a child's feeling or body. It can happen to boys or girls in any family. Often, hurt feeling lasts long even after a hurt body has healed. They grow up hating themselves. Self esteem is an important issue for everyone who was abused as a child. Blaming themselves for the abuse is also very common because they were either overtly by their abuser that it was their fault, or they lead to believe that it was his or her fault to convert messages they received from others. The impact of child abuse on survivors. The impact of child abuse is lifelong or irrevocable. The victims of abuse, the intrinsic children, generally have emotional, psychological, physical, and mental impact on their lives which harms their past, present, as well as future. The impact of child abuse is not only over the abused child. Contemporary findings show that soaring level of child abuse have dreadfully repercussion on the country's economic as well as over a stressed period of time. If you are an adult who are abused as a child, it is possible that you may have never spoken to anyone about this. Many adults keep this a secret well into their adult life and find that the effect upon them has a drastic consequences not only throughout their childhood but also in their adult life. There are three types of impact of child abuse on survivors. The first one is psychological and behavioral impact. The second one is physical impact. And the third one is socio-economic impact. In physical and behavioral impact on survivor, anxiety in daily activities of life and fear from specific people or object or strangers or to the touch of people is a general impact of physical or sexual abuse. Eating and sleeping disorders are one of the primary impact of child abuse. The child may have nightmares and fall short of sleep. He would also have problem in building trust relationship with people due to these past experiences. Child abuse adversely impact the child's confidence and self-esteem. The child might become emotionally weak or susceptible. It might also be submissiveness in behavior. In physical impact on survivor, physical harm to the child is a resultant of abuse, mostly in case of physical or sexual abuse. This harm is in the form of bruises, marks, burns, wounds, or bleeding, swelling, scratches, etc. Child workers in factories or mines subsequently develop the heart and lung diseases with the passage of time. They also suffer lack of immunity to airborne diseases and face an early old age. Physical impact of abuse result in self mutilation of body parts, or even at times it leads to suicidal attempts by the children. Children was are diagnosed with sexual transmitted disease are generally associated with an abused past. And the third one is psychoeconomic impact. In psychoeconomic impact of child abuse is significantly larger than it seems to be. Child labor being one of the major components of abuse highlights the perilous outcomes on the society. The economic impact of child abuse is often ignored, though it surmounts to a huge deflect in the growth of the economy, especially in the developing economies of Asia. Child abuse results in perniciously affecting the child's education and work performance. This reduces the child's productivity as a human capital, which is in turn detrimental for the development of the nation. Abused children mostly learn towards substance abuse as a result of prolonged exposure to the vicious atmosphere. Here is a one survey of economic impact on survivor at the age of 50 to 60. Men who suffers child abuse are twicely as like to be without a job. 34% male survivors household income lowers by 34%. 17% of the men and 14% of female survivors are not working. Sickness and disabilities are the main reason for being out of work. Male survivors are twice as likely to live alone. Finding on lost income will have implications for compensation payouts. That's all. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My topic of discussion is parental anxiety. Witnessing a parent in a state of anxiety can be more than just momentarily upsetting for children. Kids look up to their parent for ambiguous scenarios, but if a parent seems anxious and fearful, the child will determine that a certain scenarios are unsafe to be in. What if I'm a terrible parent? What if the baby is sick? What if I can't give them what they want? And so the worries just intensify among parents. All the worries and fears for a child are valid, but when it becomes a constant, it can be a sign of anxiety, which needs to be taken care of. Moving on to the next slide. There are certain common behaviors that parents with anxiety exhibit. Over control. Parents with anxiety tend to take control of their children's lives. What company should they be in? What university course should be taken? And many others. It can involve setting restrictive boundaries and preventing the child from moving beyond beyond them. Aside from preventing children from developing independence, it also prevents them from learning from their own mistakes. Overprotective behavior. Parental overprotection involves shielding children from harsh realities. Anxious parents show overprotective behavior, which is usually the result of genuine love and concern, but it can hamper the children from taking responsibility of their own actions. It is also known as helicopter parenting. Now, why helicopter parenting? Because in this, parents hover overhead children. They are like looking everything over every aspect of the children. That is why it is known as helicopter parenting, just like a helicopter hover overhead. It is also known as simply over parenting. If children do not become used to dealing with a variety of positive and negative emotions, then in their adulthood they may find it more difficult to continue functioning when things inevitably don't go their way. Another behavior is modeling anxious behavior. Anxious parents may verbalize their worries, or they often act in certain ways, like being jittery, jumpy, or avoidant. Children are good observers. They learn that certain situations make their parents anxious, which may lead them to feel similarly threatened by those situations and to cope in a similar avoidant manner. Next slide. Another thing is anxious parents create anxious children. Anxiety is the outcome of a detailed interplay between genes and environment. Kids inherit more than just physical characteristics, they can inherit anxiety as well, whether it is inherited literally or learned through the childhood. One of the psychologists, Dr. Golda Ginsburg, in her quote explains that children do not become anxious only because of their genes, but also through environmental catalysts. The parents with anxiety exhibit less warmth and affection towards their children, criticize them, and express their doubts about their child's ability, which can increase the chance of children to become an advanced anxiety disorder of their own. Thank you.
Good morning. My topic is social economic status that belongs to the lower class children. Basically, socioeconomic status refers or is measured by the social and economic status of the family members. Measurement of income is seems easy, but it is a difficult task to practice. The most direct method you can ask is to just ask the parents or the children to evaluate or report their monthly or yearly income. But however many people feel reluctant because हम किसी से भी बात करते हैं तो nobody is मतलब हर कोई इतना कंफर्टेबल नहीं हो पाता कि वो अपनी रियल फिगर्स को अमाउंट को ऐसे बता पाए और यही जो पॉइंट है ये हमारा दर्शाता है कि देयर इज़ अ बिग डिफरेंस बिटवीन हैव एंड हैव नॉट्स Have refers to the rich class people who are able to have अचीव एवरीथिंग, उनके पास मल्टीपल रिसोर्सेज होते हैं, ऑप्टिमम रिसोर्सेज होते हैं। लेकिन जो लोअर क्लास पीपल होते हैं, दोज आर come into the category of have nots. They do not have that kind of resources available to them. But there is a but my point of discussion is socio-economic status belonging to the lower class children, जो कि उन लोगों से डील करते हैं जो कि फाइनेंशियली साउंड नहीं होते और इकोनॉमिकली बैकग्राउंड उनका इतना कुछ अच्छा नहीं होता. So यशस्वी, can you please move to the next slide? So I will be discussing the ill effects on the children from low economic status. First is inadequate nutrition. क्योंकि प्रॉपर उनके पास फाइनेंशियल रिसोर्सेज नहीं होते, पेरेंट्स बहुत काम करते हैं कि पेरेंट्स यूज टू वर्क वेरी हार्ड जिससे कि वो अपने बच्चों को अच्छी डाइट दे सके, लेकिन दे आर अनेबल टू डू सो. उनका कहते हैं कि दो वक्त की रोटी कमाना भी बहुत मुश्किल पड़ जाता है, जिसकी वजह से दे आर अनेबल टू give the adequate or balanced diet to their children. Second is risk to the health factors. न्यूट्रिशन ना मिलने की वजह से हेल्थ फैक्टर्स पे बहुत इफेक्ट पड़ता है. सेकेंड चीज़ ये होती है कि दे यूज टू ग्रो अप इन द एनवायरनमेंट विच इज़ नॉट वेरी डेवलप्ड. वहाँ पे हाइजीन, सैनिटाइजेशन, इन सब चीज़ों का ध्यान नहीं रखा जाता. थर्ड इज डिपेंडेंसी ऑन अदर्स. पीपल यूज टू डिपेंड ऑन अदर्स बिकॉज उनके पास प्रॉपर रिसोर्सेज अवेलेबल नहीं होते. इवन उनको फाइनेंशियल चीज़ों के लिए भी बाकी लोगों पे डिपेंड करना पड़ता है. और यही सब पेरेंट्स की हैबिट को देखकर the children also inculcate the habit of depending on others, always relying on others. Next point is increases child labor. क्योंकि उनके पास प्रॉपर रिसोर्सेज नहीं होते, तो उनके पास एक अपॉर्चुनिटी होती है कि उनके पास जितने भी रिसोर्सेज हैं वो उनको प्रॉपरली यूटिलाइज करें, जिसकी वजह से ओवर पॉपुलेशन भी होती है. और वो हमेशा अपने चिल्ड्रन को बोलते हैं कि कुछ भी करके यू हैव टू डू वर्क, और आप प्लीज़ क्या बोलते हैं कि एम्प्लॉयमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ में हेल्प कराओ, फाइनेंशियल इनकम में हेल्प कराओ, जिसकी वजह से उनका एजुकेशन बैकग्राउंड इतना स्ट्रांग नहीं हो पाता. एंड समटाइम्स ऑल्सो पेरेंट्स इतने ज़्यादा एग्रेसिव हो जाते हैं इनकम कमाने की वजह से कि दे यूज टू नेग्लेक्ट देयर चाइल्ड. उनकी जितनी भी सोशल कंडीशंस होती हैं या जो उनकी रिक्वायरमेंट्स होती हैं उनको ध्यान नहीं दिया जाता. फिजिकल बिहेवियर उनके साथ गलत तरीके से किया जाता है, उनके साथ डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस भी होती है. एंड दे उन चिल्ड्रंस के अंदर इमोशनल डेवलपमेंट भी नहीं हो पाता. दे यूज टू इन्वॉल्व इन द मैल प्रैक्टिसेस लाइक रॉबरी में इंगेज होना या कुछ गलत सराउंडिंग्स में रहना, ड्रग्स लेना, और बहुत सारी चीज़ें होती हैं जो कि चिल्ड्रन को पूरी तरीके से इफ़ेक्ट कर देती हैं. कैन यू प्लीज़ गो टू द नेक्स्ट स्लाइड. नेक्स्ट आता है एक्सपोजर ऑफ इन्वायरमेंटल हार्म्स. इन्वायरमेंटल हार्म्स में वही सारी कंडीशंस आती हैं जिसमें कि उनके पास प्रॉपर डेवलपमेंट के लिए चीज़ें नहीं होती. दे यूज टू स्टेट द फैक्ट कि हमारे पास तो अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ ही नहीं है, हमारे पास तो कोई चीज़ ही नहीं है, ना हमारी हेल्थ अच्छी है, ना हमारा एजुकेशनल बैकग्राउंड अच्छा है, हम आगे फोकस नहीं कर पाएंगे. और इसकी वजह से उनका जो सोशल डेवलपमेंट होता है वो भी नहीं हो पाता, वो कम्युनिकेट नहीं कर पाते लोगों से. नेक्स्ट इज वर्बल एब्यूज़. क्योंकि पेरेंट्स भी काफ़ी प्रॉब्लमैटिक होते हैं, और हम कह सकते हैं कि पेरेंट्स बहुत ज़्यादा एग्रेसिव हो जाते हैं, और जिसकी वजह से वो वर्बल एब्यूज़ करते हैं जो इंडिविजुअली जो अल्टीमेटली इंडिविजुअल के बिहेवियर को इफ़ेक्ट करता है. That also develops a sociopathic behavior. There is a little difference between psychopathic and sociopathic behavior. Sociopathic behavior में ये होता है कि बच्चों को नहीं पता होता कि उनके लिए क्या सही है और क्या चीज़ गलत है, and they used to indulge in the wrong practices. और साइकोपैथिक बिहेवियर में ये होता है कि उनको पता होता है कि वो जो कर रहे हैं वो गलत है. दे ऑल्सो यूज टू फील, मतलब उनको गिल्टी फील करना चाहिए बट वो गिल्टी फील करते नहीं हैं. दिस ऑल्सो डेवलप्स अ सोशियोपैथिक बिहेवियर जिसमें उन्हें पता है कि वो गिल्टी है बट दे आर ऑल्सो डूइंग द सेम प्रैक्टिसेस. उनको पता नहीं है कि क्या सही है क्या गलत है, बट फिर भी वो काम करते हैं. एंड द नेक्स्ट इज पुअर मेंटल वेलबींग, उनका मेंटली डेवलप नहीं हो पाते, उनका इंटेलेक्चुअल डेवलपमेंट नहीं हो पाता, कॉग्निटिव डेवलपमेंट नहीं हो पाता, जिसकी वजह से चिल्ड्रन बहुत ज़्यादा सफ़र करते हैं. थैंक यू.
Good morning, everyone. My topic is over-involved parents. So, over-involved parents, Yashasvi, please next slide. Over-involved parents who are present in every aspect of their life, of their child's life, are often referred to as a parenting style that affects childhood. These parents are also known as snowplows, removing obstacles out of their kids' path, or helicopter parents who hover about and micromanage every aspect of their child's life. Since they won't let their children to do anything alone, the children can't learn to overcome challenges by themselves. These children don't like to solve difficult problems like perseverance and may even procrastinate in protest when something requires a lot of effort. You should be next slide. Next. Now, some long-term consequences. First one is underdevelopment of brain. The area of the brain that deals with these components is housed in the prefrontal part of brain. The part of the brain is found to only have fully developed at 25 years of age. This increases the connectivity and effectiveness of this part of the brain. Having this type of parents could be hindering and a child's ability to develop problem solving and decision making. Next one is low self-esteem and confidence. The over-involvement of the parents makes child believe that their parents will not trust them if they do something independently. It therefore leads to lack of self-esteem and confidence. Next one is immature coping skills. Low frustration tolerance is equal to disadvantage in the workforce. When parents is always there to present the problem at first sight or clean up the mess, the child can never learn through failures, disappointment, or loss inevitable aspect of everyone's life. The deprive the kid of any meaningful consequences for their action. As a result, the kid miss out on the opportunity to learn valuable life lesson from the mistakes they make. Life lessons that would contribute to their emotional intelligence. Next one is sense of entitlement complex. When parents involve themselves in their child's academic, social, athletic lives, children get accustomed to always having their parents to fulfill their needs. This makes them demanding as they feel that it is their right to have what they want. Next one is meanness and aggression. Research shows that kids raised by intrusive helicopter parents tend to be uh, meaner or more hostile towards other kids. This is believed to be a response of extreme parental control. Kids act out and assert their dominance as a way to regain a sense of agency over their lives. As such, they tend to become irritable and less patient when faced with having to relate well with peers. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So, in this long presentation of multiple childhood, my topic is orphans. So, according to UNICEF, every day 5,760 and more than that children became orphans. So, who are orphans? Yashasvi, next slide. So, orphans are the children whose both parents are dead or they are deprived of their love. So, uh, there according to UNICEF there are several types of orphans. First is a maternal orphan, a child who has lost his mother. So the child is known as maternal orphan. A child who has lost his father, he is known as paternal orphan. There is a other term, double orphan and half orphan. Double orphan is a child who who has lost his both of their parents, and half orphan is a child who has lost either of mother or his father. So there are several effects which causes or which are impact which are on orphan. So first one is mental disorder. So orphans are at great risk to suffer from mental disorder, since they are experience violence and other crucial things. They often are traumatized and will suffer from several mental disorder conditions. This include increase in probability of suicidal and self-harming. Moreover, children are experience orphanism will be shocked that they will never be able to have normal life with their family, since they simply mistrust everyone and around them due to the past experiences. Second one is lack of education. Orphan will also suffer from lack of education, since they often not do not do have people to care about them and send them to school. They may also not able to afford school, since since they do not have financial support, or they do not have enough money. Without proper education, these children are at great risk of exploitation by firms in the future, since they have to rely on small jobs in order to survive. Health effects. Orphan also suffer from several health issues, since they often know who looks after them. They have to deal with several injuries and diseases by their own. They will not be able to afford proper medical treatment, which may result in several consequences damage in the future. Lack of proper medication may also result in chronic diseases. Due to lack of medical treatment, orphan often have a lower life expectancy than other children. Homelessness. After losing their parents, some orphan may have no family left and to take care of them. This may lead to homelessness for many orphans, since they do not be able to afford housing due to lack of income. The orphan may have lack proper education and will not be able to earn sufficient income for future. Therefore, they also have to stay homeless in their future. Social isolation. Or orphan also suffer from social isolation, since they often homeless. They lack friend and kind of social glue. Due to mental disorder, they may not be able to spend their time with others. Social isolation may lead to several level of loneliness for the children, which may transpose in other, and they can use several drugs, and they can be indulge in several crimes later. Poverty. Since the orphan do not have access of proper education, they cannot afford they cannot afford work. Instead, they will become dependent on low paid jobs, and in future they will result in life poverty. Children of orphan are likely to stay poor, since it is shown that studies that poverty is often inherited. Starvation. Many often also suffered from starvation. They are often not able to earn enough money to meet their daily basis needs. Due to low level of education, they often are unemployed, and they have to rely on low paid jobs. Solution of orphanism. Provided subsidies in education. Lack of education is a big problem caused by orphanism, since it often keep these children poor even they turn as grown up. Therefore, it is crucial to provide education for orphan, and also subsidize them financially to make affordable to them. Thus orphan will be able to get better education and more likely to escape from poverty as they grown up. Psychological support. Since orphans are experience quite bad things in their childhood, they often need they often suffer from several mental conditions. In order to help orphan to overcome trauma, Local authorities have to provide sufficient psychological support. These children need someone who they trust and talk about their mental problems. Provide shelter. Government and local municipalities should take should make sure that each orphan provides shelter in their house. It also it should be also assured that these children have an adult who take care of them and look after them. These orphans will regain trust in society if they have adults who treat them as well. Thus, it is crucial for an orphan to provide housing for a person who take care and ensure a better life in future. Adoption can make a big contribution to improve the life of an orphan by adopting him or her. This may prevent children becoming orphan but may also give orphan a better life in future. By following these processes, one can make one child more happy and provide them a better life in future. Thank you, and I would like Vishnu to to continue.
Hello everyone. Today I'm unable to open my camera. So just a minute. My topic is effect of cultural differences and misconception in children's growth. Ma'am, actually I'm today in AIMS. So ma'am, थोड़ी
It's okay,
can
Vishnu. If there is anyone else who can continue, then
thank you ma'am.
you can do it.
Children in different cultures differ in how they think about themselves and relate to others. They also memorize events differently. For example, when preschoolers were asked to describe a recent special personal experience, children provided more detailed description, recalled more specific events, and stressed their preferences, feelings, and opinions about it more than opinions. Cultural effects of parenting. Parents in different cultures also play an important role in modeling children's behavior and thinking patterns. Typically, parents are the ones who prepare the children to interact with wider society. Children's interaction with their parents often acts as the archetype of how to behave around others. Learning a variety of socio-cultural rules, expectations, and taboos. For example, young children typically develop a conversational style resembling their parents, and that often depends on culture. For example, European American children frequently provide long, elaborative, self focused narratives emphasizing personal preferences and autonomy. Their interaction style also tends to be reciprocal, talking turns in talk, taking turns in talking. In contrast, Korean and Chinese children's accounts are usually brief, relation oriented, and have a great concern with authority. They often take a more passive role in the conversations. From class to court, as the world is getting increasingly globalized, knowledge regarding cultural differences in children's thinking, memory, and how they interact with adults has important practical implications in many areas where you have to understand child psychology. For instance, teachers may need to assess children who come from a variety of cultural backgrounds. Knowing how children coming from a different culture think and talk differently can help the teacher better interview them as part of an oral academic test. For example, लाइक जैसे मैम जैसे मैम कल्चर इफेक्ट है वो स्टेट टू स्टेट भी हो सकता है, कंट्री टू कंट्री भी हो सकता है. Another important area is forensic investigations. Being aware that Chinese children tend to recall details regarding other people and be brief in their initial response to questions may enable the investigator to allow more time for narrative practice, to prepare the child to answer open ended questions and promote them with follow up questions. Also knowing that Chinese children may be more sensitive, compliant to authority figures, and more obedient to a per- perpetrator within the family. An interviewer may need to spend more time in building rapport to help the child relax and reduce their perceived authority. They should also be they should also be They should also be prepared to be patient with reluctance in disclosing abuse within families. While children are unique and develop at their own pace, the cultural influence on their development is clearly considerable. It may even affect how quickly children reach different development milestones. But research on this complicated subject is still inclusive. Importantly, knowledge about cultural differences can also help us pin down what all children have in common. An insatiable curiosity about the world and the love for the people around them. Another मैम जैसे और मैं कुछ ऐड करना चाहूँगा मैम मिसकंसेप्शन का जैसे मैम हमारे कंट्री में क्या है कि बच्चों को शुरू से ना जैसे चांद सितारों की कहानी सुनाई जाती है तो बच्चा मैम और कि चंदा मामा है मतलब चंदा मामा दूर के मैम ऐसे एक कहानी सुनाई जाती है तो मैम बच्चा उसको ऑब्जर्व करता है फिर जैसे जैसे वो बड़ा होता है तो उसको पता चलता है कि चंदा मामा नहीं है एक मतलब सैटेलाइट है मतलब मून है एक जो अर्थ के अराउंड राउंड करता है तो मैम जैसे मतलब इन केस वो इंडिया से अदर किसी कंट्री में जा रहा है लाइक ऑस्ट्रेलिया अमेरिका तो वहां पे जाके ये बोलेगा कि छोटा बच्चा मैम गया कि ये देखो चंदा मामा तो बच्चे उसको मैम मजाक उड़ाएंगे लेकिन उनको हमारे कल्चर के बारे में नहीं पता हमको उसके कल्चर के बारे में नहीं पता तो डेट्स ऑल मैम आई लाइक टू माई नेक्स्ट फ्लो
Who is next? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Who is going to explain this? Children with learning disabilities. Group 5.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Good afternoon, everyone. My topic is children of parents with mental illness. We all know that how in our society mental illness is still considered as a taboo. We as adults feel uncomfortable talking about mental illness, so we can only imagine how much it affects children who are not mature enough to know what problems their parents are facing. So, next slide, please. Next. Mental illness is a health condition that involves changes in emotion, thinking, and behavior. It can cause problems in all aspects of a person's life, including their social, work, and family activities. Now, the pain and mental disorder launches a wave of risk factors that in turn predict the emergence of psychological problems in the offspring. Parents with mental disorder demonstrate poor parenting skills. We all know that if parents are so much involved in treating their mental illness, they do not have that time or capacity to see how their children are doing, especially with their school work, or uh, they start ignoring their children, not purposefully, but because their mental health condition doesn't allow them to take care of the child or uh, or to facilitate in their upbringing. Next slide, please. Now, we will discuss what do these children with mental illness, what are the difficulties they face. So these many children with such parents, they start blaming themselves for their parents' condition. They start feeling that they might be the reason their parents are not faring well in their illness. They feel depressed. Many often they develop the same illness because these mental illness are genetic in nature. Some of them, such as schizophrenia, Alzheimer, bipolar. So these children are themselves at a higher risk of possessing them later on in their life. More often than not, they're often separated time and again from their parents because their parents, they need to go for their own health care checkup to the hospital to get the treatment. So children are left home all alone. Then they start feeling very isolated. They're very mistreated, not looked after. In school also, these children, they face harassment from other fellow children. They're bullied. They're called names. So they hear unkind things about their parents because often children are very much attached to their parents. If somebody speaks ill about our family or about our parents, we feel ashamed, we feel sad. Why is it happening to us? And and the level of maturity of children at this stage is not much, so they start blaming themselves in turn. Often, children start withdrawing themselves from social functions, taking part, participating in activities in school, and they become more and more anxious. They're not able to fare well in their studies, and their grades are affected. They are not able to concentrate on their schoolwork, on their homework. So, how to overcome these difficulties? So, it is very essential to have a reliable and consistent network of caring parent or some adult to talk to, maybe their elder siblings or somebody else in the family who can understand and guide the child accordingly. Children should be given adequate information and explanation regarding their parents' health condition. And it is very important to encourage the child and support the child because at this stage, children need that encouragement externally, not only internally, because internally it is very difficult since children are not so much aware, but they need that encouragement through external factors. Children can be given help through social work, health groups, which can provide them with the adequate care and health that they require and the strength that they need. And children who are mature enough, they can practice mindfulness or meditation and some other medication also, as per doctor's advice. And when if supposedly they're not in a crisis situation, having a better self help care routine such as exercising, meditation, journaling, or talking to people and elders is very beneficial. Thank you.
Now, I would like to request and welcome any questions regarding the same. You may please raise your hand if you have any. Great, thank you. Now, I would like to put an end to our seminar and webinar, as we name it, with some tokens of appreciations. Everyone participated and contributed in the best way they can. I would like to thank our respected teacher, Ms. Ritu ma'am, for her guidance and management for the smooth functioning of this webinar as well. And we learned so many things here, such as different parenting styles, children with special need, inappropriate schooling, working parents, and the other parenting tips. And I cannot name it because we have learned so many things from this helpful webinar. All the tutorial groups gave their best in the presentation as well. And I would like to congratulate all of us for the success of this webinar. Thank you and have a blissful day ahead.